Hello, everyone. My name is Kat DesCamp-Renner, and I'm the Program Assistant for Middle East Policy at FCNL. This summer, I found footage from my dad's handheld video camera from the weekend after 9/11. At 2, I am young enough that my sister still finds me adorable and fascinating, chattering next to me and poking my chubby cheeks and playing with my hair as my dad zooms in on my face. The next shot, my sister and I have disappeared into the other room to fetch some toys, and it's suddenly silent. And my dad pulls out that day's copy of The Oregonian with the headline, "Bush, We're at War," and zooms out on it silently. Congress had passed a blank check for the use of military force on Friday. My sister and I come back into the room, toys in tow, and my dad ends the tape. When I saw that for the first time this summer, I felt like someone had plucked a string of twine I hadn't even known I'd been tied to for 20 years, anchored somewhere behind me and invisible until I felt it oscillate. I turned around, and for a second I could see everywhere I'd been since then and how I'd gotten here. I don't remember that Tuesday in September, and the earliest memory I have of the Iraq War or anything to do with foreign policy is my older sister exclaiming that we had captured Saddam Hussein, even though neither of us really knew what that meant. So in a way, it makes sense that I fell headfirst into Middle East policy based on those formative memories, not of 9/11, but of the government's response to it, because of the way that response reverberated across the globe and across my own life. Around age 10, I developed a habit of swiping the latest copy of Newsweek from my dad's desk and reading them cover to cover. There was usually an article on something happening in the Middle East, and I was always most drawn to those, especially when the Iranian Green Movement and the Arab Spring began. That was before Occupy Wall Street, in a moment that felt increasingly dark and precarious to me. I'd watched my dad lose his job in the first round of mass layoffs from the Great Recession, watched for 3 years as the financial crisis continued to crush down on my family. I cried in the school supplies aisle at Target. I cried anywhere that cost my parents money, and to this day have never felt more powerless, have never felt smaller in the face of a bigger problem. Watching the Arab Spring was the first time I saw mass political protest, and it made me feel like maybe I didn't have to be small and powerless, because here were other people taking control of their power. It made me want to learn about the countries those protests took place in and why people were protesting and what the US had to do with it all. In college, every year when we came back from winter break, my friends in my Persian language class who had visited family in Iran over the break would mention how hard it was to get medicine there or how much food prices had gone up since the US had withdrawn from the nuclear agreement. And every year it got worse until the year we spent the second half of winter break terrified we would go to war with Iran. I worked for 3 years in college at a job where I regularly talked with Yazidis in Iraq, an ethnic and religious minority group recovering from genocide committed by ISIS, which had emerged out of the chaos the US carelessly sowed in the region, beginning the day we decided to go to war. Someone plucks a string on this side of the world, casts a vote, before I'm old enough to remember, and that string is still vibrating after all this time and causing ripple effects thousands of miles away. I spent most of my life watching the US make its Middle East policy based on a series of imagined and inflated threats, supposedly in the name of protecting Americans. During the 20th anniversary of 9/11 this year, I read countless think pieces about how 9/11 changed the American psyche by demonstrating that we were no longer untouchable, by making us feel fundamentally insecure and unsafe. But if the dominating emotion of the last 2 decades has been precarity and fear, it is not because of 9/11, but because I watched the economy collapse and pull my family down with it, because I watched COVID ravage the country and kill 700,000 people, because every summer I watch my home state of Oregon go up in flames to the point where the wildfire smoke follows me to this side of the country. None of the things we did to supposedly protect ourselves from danger really protected us at all, but that's not what actually matters. What matters is that we've been inflicting incalculable harm on the people in the Middle East, people whose lives have meaning and value, and who deserve to be on the receiving end of a foreign policy that doesn't disregard their humanity. My generation has to be the one to turn around and see the strings that are still oscillating, and we have to cut them off.